We have qualified, we're in the pipeline, and that is this point I want to stress here today. I want the new high school, a brand new high school built on the current location, the best high school at the best cost we can get. So if they pick, this is a scenario, if the high school building committee picks Cider Mill land and town meeting approves it and we do nothing at all, it'll come to us in November of this year to vote yes or no for the new high school. Some people have said in the newspaper that whatever the high school building committee's choice is, we should respect it and let it go. That is where I have a complete disagreement. This high school building committee, it does not speak for me. They do not speak for anybody else. They speak for themselves, and I don't know who they speak for. They're supposed to speak for everybody. There is my contention. It happens that we end up buying this land, and then it turns out to be the road to nowhere. At the end of Middlesex Turnpike and Concord Road now, there's a road there with barricades. That was the land that we bought for $2 million to put the new Parker School. After we bought the land, we found out, this was not very long ago, we found out we could not build there. That same thing could happen to this land at Cider Mill. But I wouldn't move the school even if we did own the land and at Cider Mill right now, which we don't.
The other thing on Cider Mill, I've been farming that land for 46 years. We're harvesting trees, tomatoes. I've been serving the people of Billerica with the very best tomatoes money can buy.
Yeah. That is true. Anyway, thank you very much. And now we're going to have Sandra McMillan. Hi, folks. We're back with another guest. We have a long-time town meeting member, Sandra McMillan. Her and her husband have been, her former husband, he's deceased, but it was a hard worker for the town, and she has been a very hard worker for many years, and I would like to introduce Sandy McMillan.
Thank
Hi.
you, George, for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's good that you're here.
I appreciate it. And as you said, I'm starting my 21st year as town meeting member, and I'm here to try to have the people informed on what's going on around town. It's very, very important. I can't understand why there's even a question. Why not keep the high school where it is? Build the new high school right where it is. And when it's completed, you could tear it down and then have the fields or whatever. And I hope the residents of Billerica really, really pay attention to this issue because it's very, very important.
About the majority of our town.
Oh, I think the majority of our town want a new high school, no doubt about it. I mean, it's, you know, we need one.
Right.
And I believe the residents want it, but they want it as cost effective as possible.
Right.
I mean, don't waste any tax dollars whatsoever.
Well, if we leave the high school site that we're at, we will have to buy land, number one.
Right.
The land is in contention. The land is, the traffic, I live on the road, and people are saying, because I live there. Yes,
Right.
I do live there, and I know the land very well. It's backed up already. It's a fast road. It's people fly on that road. It's going to be a danger. Where one of the proposed openings they have is on a curve coming up the hill, you know, and the place is already a parking lot, and you're going to add, you know, probably 500 cars. They say they have experts to checking this out, and they say there's experts that can circumvent, engineers can get rid of traffic. I don't know how they're going to do that, but that's, even if we own this land outright, which we don't, I would not be in favor of moving the high school.
Right. It's not a good location.
And you know, there's some animals on that land. It's zoned for some condos. You know, I always like to read the book Walden, and from you know the old days at Walden's Pond, Henry David Thoreau. You know, we have an opportunity. That land is lucky to be there to begin with, and you know, I mean, talk about if we ever did acquire it for elderly housing someday, if we ever did have a farm with elderly housing, if we had some elderly housing there, a small group, and keep the land around it, the Whiffle Tree water resource is at the bottom of this hill. there's a myriad of reasons why this is a bad plan. And even if we own the land, I would not move the school. And we have with us a town meeting member who's been a long-term resident in Billerica. His son was a former selectman, a former state rep. He unfortunately recently is passed away, Brian Candramila. But this is his father, Vincent, and he's a hard worker and he cares about our town, and we're going to get a few of his thoughts on whether he wants the new high school to be moved or built on site where it is now. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Vincent Candramila. Vinny, how are you?
Good. How you doing, John?
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on that.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with people, and I'd like to express my opinion. Gotten to a few of the meetings, and then I've kind of expressed up there and asked a few questions.
Can I just interrupt you?
Sure.
You went to the you went to the high school building committee meetings.
high
'cause
school
people
building
don't know.
committee,
These
yeah.
are the
And I stayed for the-
14 people that are going to make this choice. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I also stayed over for the other meeting where they want to move everybody around. And,
Can you explain the moving everybody around for the people that don't know?
They want to close the Vining School, and they want to bus the kids, and I emphasize the fact that you're going to be busing kids all over town. So,
To 8th grade. They want to add in the 8th grade possibly with the high school
and
students.
with the high school,
Right.
and they want to move, I think, the 5th grade up to the junior high school, and then, well, they're going to have to put the kindergartens into the regular schools as it is anyways. But that means more busing. You know, they don't even think about the liability. They talk about liability in a lot of things, but when it comes down to moving the kids, because they want to have the new high school and they want to check the numbers. It reminds me of the old shell game with numbers. Which shell is the bean under, you know? And so if you move enough of numbers around, you're going to get what you want, and this is what it reminds me of. And I just think it's wrong that they're kind of been locked on from the very beginning. They've been locked on to building a new high school, not really looking at the point of taking the old high school, which is two different buildings, and seeing whether they could actually, in fact, I think Mr. Hefferman asked the last time and never got an answer, at the last meeting, to if they could do that. And they never really answered him, at least if they did, I didn't hear it. But anyways, he had said the same thing, whether they could renovate the old section and then keep everybody in the new section, and then do what, either tear it down or whatever they had to do. But they never really answered that one, and or at least, like I said, I didn't hear it. But not to repeat myself, but anyways, I took a walk through the school. I was supposed to meet them, and my kids went in, they thought was the main entrance, but evidently it wasn't, and I didn't meet them. So I took a walk through the high school myself, and I just looked every place. There's water marks and leaks and stuff like that, but, I knocked on the wall, and it didn't fall down. Mm-hmm. So it's all concrete blocks. Mm-hmm. It's a well-structured building. Mm-hmm. So I looked at the old library, I look at the old town hall, and the old ditches where we got the town hall now, the main office. Those buildings were all redone over.
1890 buildings, I believe.
And they look very nice.
Yes.
And and I don't see why they're not looking into that. Their idea is new building. They don't care whether they build it on Cedar Farm, down at Cedar Mill Road there.
Cedar Mill, yes.
Yeah, over here, and from what I gathered in the conversations that they were going over in the plans, they want to build a stadium. They want to fill the stadium in on whatever plan that they have with the high school.
A sports stadium.
A sports stadium. Thank you for correcting me about it. But anyways, and I say to myself, we got the one down in Marshall. It's worked very well. If anything, if you want to update that or do something down there, I would say, well, that sounds like a reasonable situation. But in order to get the stadium in, they've got to configure the new high school to fit in with the plans on the high school, with the stadium. And they're not just looking at the high school. See, they're looking at, like I said, I think just got to have a stadium on the high school. We got plenty of fields. Most of the problems with the high school and all the schools in town is that they don't maintain them. I went up the other night, my grandchildren are in competition, and I went up to the which one is the one up there?
Hydro?
Southern. The Marshall.
Marshall.
And I looked, as I was walking up, the walk up there is all breaking up. I said to myself, what does it take? They should have been cemented. They should have taken care of it.
Right.
But that's because now when they do things like that, like have competition or whatever they have down there, think of people. Old people, people with wheelchairs, people that have to walk with walkers. Very easy for them to get hurt. Now, they don't think nothing about the liability of maintaining nothing.
Right.
I mean, I don't know even where the superintendent of the school lives or what, but evidently he don't get to visit anything. If he does, he walks with blinders when he goes every place. Because there is a lot of work that needs to be done with all the schools. Years ago, we had maintenance crews that did a lot. The janitors did a lot of work. There is something that they're missing that this work doesn't get done. You know, it's like everything else. If you don't have a crew or some up top to make the people and show them what's got to get done, they'll walk by because they didn't say, hey, nobody told me to do that. You know?
Excellent point. Can I add in one
Sure
thing?
then.
I think Mr. Candramilla just made a great point. I haven't been talking about whether we could rebuild the high school that we're at right now. It seems to be the overwhelming consensus that we can't add in $100 or $150 million and rebuild our high school. They say there could be contaminants there could be costs that are unforeseen that could make this project a bust. But and that it's so old, and I agree that, you know, maybe we could have invest that money and make a beautiful building. They say they want to have shops. The old school did have shops in it, like not a Charging Tech, but when I made this program talking about the preferred plan, it looks like we're not going to have the option to rebuild the high school.
No.